Welcome to Voices of Fear, the channel where shadows take form and true stories of terror are given a voice. Tonight, we descend into the haunted world of Asia's real estate market. Homes abandoned, apartments avoided, properties where rent is low for a reason, because the dead refuse to leave. But before we begin, a warning. Viewer discretion is advised. What you're about to hear is not just another ghost tale. It is the testimony of a realtor who lived through something he still refuses to talk about in the light of day. Tell me, where in the world are you watching from tonight? Comment your city, comment your country, and join this global circle of fear. And if you're new here, subscribe now to Voices of Fear, so you never miss the next chilling story waiting in the dark. In many Asian countries, real estate is not just about location, price, or square footage. It's about history. Every wall, every floorboard, every corner holds memories. And sometimes those memories refuse to leave. Buyers and tenants will often ask one crucial question before signing a lease. Has anyone died here? In Japan, there's even a term for such properties: Jiko, Bukken. These are stigmatized homes where suicides, murders, or unexplained deaths have taken place. The rent might be cut in half, but so too is the peace of mind, because locals believe that when someone dies violently or with unfinished business, their energy lingers. They wait, they watch, and sometimes they never forgive. In these homes, strange things are said to happen. Tenants whisper of shadows passing in the night, taps that turn on by themselves, or the weight of invisible eyes pressing down on them while they sleep. But this fear isn't only Japanese. In Hong Kong and Taiwan, there's the dreaded Ghost Month. During this time, the gates of the underworld are said to open, and restless spirits roam freely among the living. Families avoid moving into new homes during this season, terrified that a wandering spirit could slip in with them and never leave. Across Asia, the belief is strong. A house is more than a shelter. It can be a prison for the dead, and sometimes, without knowing, it becomes a trap for the living as well. Realtors, driven by money or pressured to sell, often walk a dangerous line. Some disclose the truth, warning clients of a home's dark history, but others remain silent, and their silence has consequences. This story comes from one such realtor, a man who stepped into an apartment that looked ordinary on the surface, but inside it was different, much different. His testimony is chilling, and what happened after left him silent forever. He was a seasoned realtor in his 40s. Let's call him Mr. K. For nearly 2 decades, he had guided families into new beginnings, closing deals, smiling through negotiations, hiding his own exhaustion with the polished charm of a salesman. But beneath that polished surface, he carried something else, the quiet awareness that in this profession, not every property is just brick and stone. Some hold shadows, others hold secrets, and sometimes those secrets are not eager to be forgotten. Mr. K worked in a busy East Asian city where apartments were always in demand, yet, strangely, this particular unit had sat vacant for over a year. Too long. On paper, it was a dream listing, spacious, affordable, close to public transit. But paper lies, and whispers from the building's tenants hinted at something far darker. People moved in, but they never stayed. All were leaving quietly, always in a hurry. When Mr. K arrived at the property, the building seemed normal. Tall concrete walls, neat balconies, the usual signs of life. Potted plants, laundry swaying in the breeze, faint sounds of televisions drifting through thin walls. But then he noticed something odd. Every unit seemed alive, except this one. Its balcony was bare, curtains drawn, no sound, no movement, no sign of life, as if the apartment itself had exhaled and refused to inhale again. He unlocked the door. The moment it slid open, a heavy dampness filled his lungs. The air clung to him, humid, stale. It smelled faintly of mold, but underneath that, something else, metallic, like rust or blood. He told himself it was just old pipes, corroded air vents, but he knew this was different. He forced himself into the routine, clipboard in hand, steps steady, eyes sharp. That was how realtors survive places like this. Focus on the job, not the feeling. The living room was bare, except for a single wooden chair, oddly placed, not tucked away, not abandoned in haste, just sitting there, facing the wall, watching nothing. In the kitchen, dishes were stacked neatly in the drying rack. Dust covered them, but they looked used, as though someone had prepared a meal, set them aside, and never returned. And then the bedroom. That's when he saw it. A faint outline, dark and round, on the tatami mat, half covered by an old rug that had clearly been placed there with intention. He froze, his chest tightened, because he knew what that shape meant. This was no ordinary vacancy. Someone had died here, and not peacefully. He crouched, brushing the rug aside. The stain spread wider than he thought, darker. He swallowed hard. His clipboard slipped slightly in his hand. And then he felt it. The temperature plummeted. His breath fogged the air. Goosebumps rippled down his arms. The silence was heavy, unnatural. And then a sound. From the corner of the room came the faint, deliberate creak of the chair. But he had left the chair in the living room. His head snapped toward the doorway. It was empty, yet impossibly, the chair was there, rocking slowly, alone. Mr. K's rational mind screamed explanations, drafts, vibrations from neighboring apartments, imagination. But his gut knew better. He was not alone. And then he heard it. A voice, a whisper, a woman's whisper, soft, almost affectionate. Don't go. It came from everywhere at once, inside the walls, behind him, inside his own skull. He staggered back. His knees shook. His pen clattered to the floor. And that's when he saw. By the window stood the faint figure of a woman in a faded dress, her head tilted downward, long hair cascading forward to hide her face. In her hands, a rope, frayed, snapped. Her lips moved silently. Then the window slammed shut, a thunderous crack that rattled the glass panes. He stumbled into the hallway, desperate to escape, but something was wrong. The apartment itself seemed to shift. The corridor stretched longer, the shadows deepened, and the door behind him no longer looked like an exit, but a mouth. A black maw waiting to swallow him whole. And then he felt it. Now, cold hands around his wrists, fingers tightening, pulling him back inside. He screamed, fought, tore himself away. He didn't look back as he fled down the stairwell, his breath ragged, his vision blurred with tears. When he finally reached the street below, the world seemed too bright, too alive. He looked up. The apartment window was open again. The curtain swayed softly. The chair was still. The stain was gone, as if nothing had happened. Shaken, Mr. K tried to warn his agency, tried to mark the unit as unsafe, but his manager only laughed. "People don't want ghost stories," he said. "If you tell them, we'll never rent it." Mr. K never stepped foot in that building again. But weeks later, a young couple did. They lasted only 1 month. One night, without warning, they packed their things and left in the dark. The neighbors who saw them remembered one detail. The wife clutched her arm tightly, and when she raised her sleeve, there were bruises in the shape of long, pale fingers. But the apartment was not finished, because weeks later, a young couple moved in. They were newlyweds. He was a quiet man in his 30s. She was younger, bright, hopeful. For them, the apartment was a miracle, spacious, affordable, close to everything, too good to pass up. But bargains, as we know, often carry unseen costs. The first week was normal. They decorated, bought new curtains, laughed as they argued over where the sofa should go. Neighbors said the sound of their music and laughter filled the halls. For a brief time, the apartment seemed alive again. But then, things began to change. It started small. At night, they heard water dripping, but every time they checked, the taps were dry. Then came the chair, the same chair Mr. K had seen. The wife swore she left it in the living room, yet in the mornings it was always in the bedroom, facing the bed, watching. The husband laughed it off. He said she was imagining things, that maybe she moved it without remembering, but her unease grew. By the second week, The wife began to feel watched. She told friends she often woke at night to the sound of breathing, soft, deliberate, right beside her ear. Sometimes she would open her eyes and see nothing but the curtain swaying, though the window was closed. Other nights, she swore she saw the faint outline of a woman standing at the foot of the bed, silent, waiting. The husband dismissed it as dreams, stress, or exhaustion, but his denial would not last long. In the third week, the husband experienced it himself. He returned home late from work, the apartment dark. As he slid the door open, he felt the air shift, dense, heavy, pressing against his chest. The lights flickered, and then he heard it, a woman's whisper, soft, almost tender. "Don't go." He froze, dropped his keys, stumbled into the living room, and there it was. The chair, rocking, slowly, no one seated. From that night on, he no longer mocked his wife's fear, but by then, it was too late. The fourth week broke them. The wife began waking with bruises on her arms, finger-shaped, dark and deep, as though someone had grabbed her in her sleep. The husband grew distant, restless. Neighbors heard them arguing, his voice strained, her voice trembling. One night, the wife screamed, a cry so sharp it woke the floor below. When neighbors rushed upstairs, they found the husband outside the apartment pounding on the door, his face pale, his hands shaking. He swore his wife was still inside, but the door would not open. And from inside, they all heard it. A lullaby, a woman's voice humming gently. The husband collapsed to his knees, sobbing. Minutes later, the door creaked open on its own. The wife stumbled out, her face wet with tears, her arm marked with fresh bruises. She refused to speak. She refused to look back. That very night, they packed their belongings and fled. They left so quickly, they abandoned most of their furniture. The apartment was silent once more. Neighbors say the wife never fully recovered. She avoided the subject for years. But once, when asked directly, she said only this: "It wasn't just one spirit, it was two, a mother and her daughter. Both of them wanted me to stay." Her voice shook. "But I don't think they wanted me to leave alive." In Japanese folklore, spirits are rarely at peace when death comes with violence, grief, or regret. Such entities are called yurei, ghosts, bound to the living world, repeating their final emotions in an endless loop. The rocking chair, creaking, though no one sat in it. The faint stain that would reappear no matter how much it was scrubbed. The pale figure seen by the window, gazing into the night. Each of these are not random phenomena, but hallmarks of what locals call a lingering yurei. Psychologists, of course, offer another explanation. They argue that the mind is the most haunted place of all. In a property branded as Jiko, Bukken, a home of tragedy, the human brain is primed, to expect horror. The scratching of wood becomes footsteps. A draft of air feels like fingers brushing your skin. Fear builds its own phantoms. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. Multiple tenants reported the same details, down to the bruises left on their arms, shaped like a woman's grasp. These cannot be dismissed as imagination alone. When many people experience identical terrors in the same space, something deeper is at play. Some cultural scholars believe grief itself can imprint onto walls, floors, even furniture, a memory so powerful that it becomes more than memory. It becomes a presence, and once awakened, it feeds on attention, on fear, growing stronger with every terrified heartbeat. So, what truly haunted that apartment? A mind's shadow or a spirit's rage? The line between psychology and the supernatural may not be as clear as we want to believe. And so, we are left with questions that offer no comfort. Was Mr. K truly haunted by the ghost of a woman who could not move on, condemned to repeat her sorrow in that tiny room? Or was it something older, something darker, that used her tragedy as a mask to draw in the living, feeding on their fear? Perhaps that is the most terrifying truth of all. We may never know. What we do know is this. Across Asia, stories like this are not dismissed as folklore. They are warnings. Families refuse to move into homes of the dead. Tenants vanish in the night. And sometimes, a realtor who knows too much falls into silence. So I ask you, what do you believe? Was this an echo of grief, or a hungry spirit that refuses to let go of its prey? Share your thoughts in the comments below and tell us where in the world you're watching from, because each culture has its own ghosts, and your story may inspire the next chapter we uncover here. Thank you for walking with us into the shadows tonight. If you haven't already, subscribe to Voices of Fear, where every week true tales of the world's most haunted places are brought into the light. Until we meet again, stay safe. And remember, never ignore the history of the home you enter, because some doors, once opened, do not lead to escape. They lead deeper.